All right, deep breath and straight spine. Let's walk into this like we're sitting in a quiet room, an amber glow of lamplight, and you're telling me I've been lied to before, and I want to understand how it happens so I'll never feel that fog again. Good, not paranoid, observant. Stoic discernment, not cynicism. So here, without bullet points or lists, comes a long, vivid exploration of the psychology of deception, how skilled liars twist trust itself into a tool, and how you can walk away with the calm strength of someone who sees through illusions before they take root. Most people imagine lying as a nervous act, darting eyes, sweaty palms, the voice that wavers like a skipping vinyl record. But the best liars are playwrights. They understand that the stage is your mind, and the real performance isn't their story, it's your belief. The clever deceiver doesn't want to convince you outright. They want to sculpt your own doubt so tenderly that you convince yourself. This psychological theater begins with manipulation of rhythm and realism. A liar's greatest trick isn't fabrication, it's choreography. They control pacing, when to pause for effect, when to pretend to hesitate, when to lock eyes with a steady warmth that says, "See, I have nothing to hide." Humans are social animals built on mirroring. We subconsciously match energy, posture, even breathing. A skilled liar stands before you like a human tuning fork, vibrating at a frequency you naturally align to without realizing it. That alignment is the first step of seduction. When they flood you with extra details, it's not random decoration, it's camouflage. Your mind instinctively assumes that memory equals honesty. After all, who could invent so much, so specifically, so swiftly? But that's exactly the point. By giving your brain too much to parse, the liar overloads your scrutiny mechanism. You start tracking details instead of meaning. They bury deceit under the avalanche of apparent recall. The color of the waiting room chairs, the playlist in the background, the number of times the receptionist said, "No problem." These details act like smoke grenades in your critical thinking. When the smoke clears, what remains is your emotional impression. It felt real. And emotional impressions wear the mask of truth far more firmly than facts ever do. Then comes the emotional inversion, a shift so subtle it feels like gravity sneaking sideways. You ask a fair question. They act hurt. You request clarification. They sigh as if you've betrayed them. Now the interrogation light swings from them to you. The liar pivots from storyteller to victim, and suddenly you feel the need to defend your integrity. What began as analysis of their story becomes self-critique. Have I become too distrusting? Am I making them feel unloved? It's astonishing how quickly empathy can be weaponized. Healthy compassion depends on reciprocity. I care for you, you care for me. Weaponized compassion is unilateral. It's you caring for someone who skillfully refuses to reciprocate. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius never said, "Don't feel." They said, "Examine what your feeling serves." Ask, does my guilt serve truth, or does it serve manipulation? Because guilt can be sculpted like clay, and the moment you feel guilty merely for asking questions, you know someone else's fingerprints are shaping that clay into a cage. Liars who play the hurt card understand moral inversion, how to equate inquiry with betrayal. By making you feel cruel for your curiosity, they disarm your reasoning instincts. Compassion becomes compliance. You'll apologize for even wanting transparency. And soon, they don't have to work at deceiving you. You'll do the maintenance for them. The seasoned deceiver knows that the straightest path to a believable lie isn't invention, it's partial truth. Watch any magician. The real trick isn't in what's hidden, it's in what's shown just right. A liar begins with accurate data, verifiable names, or shared memory. This is the scaffolding of sincerity. Once you're nodding along, yes, that happened, yes, that's right, they guide you across an invisible line inside that structure. The transition is seamless because your brain has already categorized the speaker as reliable. That mental shortcut, psychologists call it truth bias, is an evolutionary adaptation. Trust is efficient. Suspicion burns glucose. Our ancestors didn't survive by questioning every grunt around the fire. They survived by cooperating quickly. But this instinct is the liar's favorite instrument. They play it like a flute. Here's the irony. The more intelligent a listener is, the more effective this tactic becomes. Analytical people verify the initial facts, check the numbers, and then assume the rest must pass the same standard. The liar counts on your logic turning into inertia. You're not gullible because you're slow. You're gullible because your brain loves cognitive consistency. Once it places someone in the truth category, it resists the friction of reevaluation. The Stoic answer isn't paranoia. Constant skepticism exhausts the soul, but discipline. Verify each claim individually. Train your mind to pause at the hinge between verified fact and untested extension. When you start hearing statements that begin with, "because, therefore, you must trust me," you're entering the fog bank where honest reason becomes borrowed conviction. Now, once you're doubting less, the manipulator begins a slower, quieter game, rewriting your recollections. Lies are rarely static. They breed and mutate depending on utility. A polished deceiver retells their own story frequently, editing small variables each time. The adjustments are subtle, shifting who initiated a decision, altering timing, trimming edges of responsibility. You might not even notice at first. Then one day you recall version 1 and they deliver version 3, but insist it's the only version that ever existed. Your discomfort becomes confusion. Maybe you misremembered. Maybe you are being unfair. After all, memory is famously unreliable, right? They'll remind you of that fact, of course, to anchor the revision.
What's happening is cognitive gaslighting. Their confidence is the paint. Your self-doubt is the canvas. They rely on your humility, on your awareness of human fallibility to override your intuition. A liar wants you intellectually modest, but emotionally dependent. The antidote, ironically, is a humble kind of self-trust. Write things down, not out of paranoia, but precision. The Stoics themselves were record keepers of the soul. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations wasn't a manifesto, it was a memory anchor. He captured his experiences before others could alter their meaning. Writing converts perception into evidence. If notes from last week say, "She blamed the client," and this week she says, "I never said that," your ink defends reality. Calmly presenting the record reveals the trick without dramatics. Reality doesn't need to shout, it just needs to be written. One of the liar's most acrobatic maneuvers occurs when you finally confront them. Just as you open your mouth to describe their behavior, they twist the mirror toward you. You're the one being dishonest. Suddenly, you're on trial for their crime. This is projection, the psychological judo in which guilt becomes a boomerang. They accuse you first so they can occupy the moral high ground. This reversal is disorienting precisely because it engages your need to demonstrate integrity. Honest people crumble under false accusation not because they're weak, but because sincerity seeks witness. We want to be seen as truthful, so we overprove. And while you're busy defending, the deceiver relaxes. The spotlight has moved. They'll even comfort you. "I just wish you'd trust me more," as if they're the magnanimous one conceding peace. If you ever find yourself repeatedly in scenarios where you are apologizing, explaining, and clarifying after raising legitimate concerns, you may not be argumentative. You may simply be standing in front of a skilled projector. The Stoic correction here is concise focus. No defensive speeches, just a straight line. "We were discussing your action. Let's return to that." Every time you redirect the conversation to facts, you puncture the balloon of reversal. You can feel the shift when it happens. The conversation feels suddenly oxygenated again because truth takes less air to breathe. Catch a liar outright. Corner them with irrefutable proof, and you might expect confrontation, or at least reluctant apology. But the clever ones detour again, deeper into the emotional labyrinth. Watch the transformation. Denial dissolves into despair. The liar breaks down, sobbing, shaking, confessing not facts, but feelings. They grieve their own flaw with cinematic intensity. "I hate myself for this," they gasped between tears, and your heart, being merciful, forgets to demand details. Now your empathy is in full bloom, and their accountability wilts safely behind it. You feel like the punisher. They look like the punished. But Stoicism teaches something crucial here. Emotion is not evidence. A crying face can signal manipulation as easily as remorse. True remorse accepts consequence. False remorse relies on your compassion to erase consequence. Watch the direction of their focus. Do they attend to the harm they caused, or to how terrible they feel? Real accountability looks outward. Manipulation collapses inward. This pattern is not merely emotional theater, it's training. They teach you that their suffering is too painful to witness, so next time you'll avoid confrontation altogether. Every time you choose comfort over clarity, the training deepens. Empathy isn't your flaw, it's your virtue. But without boundaries, it turns you into the caretaker of someone else's dishonesty. Compassion must have a backbone, not just a heartbeat. When emotion surges in such moments, breathe before you respond. Calm acknowledgement combined with firm focus is powerful. "I hear that you're upset, and the issue still needs to be resolved." You're not rejecting their humanity, you're refusing to let tears serve as solvent for truth. All these techniques, overloading, guilt, gaslighting, projection, victimhood, they weave together into one final structure: isolation. Because as long as other perspectives surround you, the liar's web frays quickly. Deception thrives in solitude, under the echo of their voice alone. The manipulator therefore engineers distance, from friends who question, from mentors who notice contradictions, from anyone who murmurs, "Something feels off." They'll frame these people as jealous, controlling, negative, unsupportive. Their stories will drip with concern. "I just don't like how your friend talks to you," or "Your sister always seems against us." They build suspicion brick by brick until your closest allies feel like intruders. Meanwhile, they become your sole translator of reality. Once that happens, they don't even need to lie often. The interpretation filter is installed. You'll pre-edit information to maintain harmony with the liar's narrative. The Stoic defense here is simple but demanding. Preserve plurality of counsel. Keep voices around you who prize truth over comfort, even when their words sting. Seneca wrote that a true friend is one who rebukes you honorably. When someone in your life reacts violently to the presence of such a friend, take note. Honest relationships endure scrutiny, corrupt ones wither under it. So actively maintain your connections. Share your perceptions out loud. Deceit flourishes in silence. Reality anchors in dialogue. It's tempting to read all this and feel slightly haunted, as if trust itself is a cracked mirror. But the Stoic path is about balance, not suspicion.
Distrust everyone and you become a cynic. Trust without discernment and you become prey. The middle way is verification without venom. Observe behavior patterns without assuming motives. Don't chase every lie with fury. Truth is often quiet, found in small discrepancies repeated until they form a melody only the attentive can hear. The first recovery step after deception is not hunting vengeance or obsessing over why. It's recalibrating perception. Liars often leave their victims obsessing. Was it all fake? Did any love, any friendship, any partnership mean anything? That spiral is where they still control you, even in absence, because your worth begins to link to their falseness, as if your failure to detect their deceit reflects your deficiency. It doesn't. Manipulation works by exploiting virtues, trust, empathy, conscientiousness. The qualities that made you susceptible are the same that make genuine relationships beautiful. Don't amputate them, refine them. A Stoic would say, "Muddled sight is cleaned not by staring harder, but by still water." After deception, still your thoughts. Write, reflect, map the patterns, not to vilify, but to understand mechanism. Awareness transforms pain into armor. When you can calmly identify each psychological turn, the excessive detail, the guilt inversion, the projection, you're no longer afraid of their existence. A magician's secret ceases to impress once revealed. There's a moment, halfway through your recovery, where you begin to notice something remarkable. People who try to manipulate you start to look unintentionally transparent. The tricks they once used feel oddly outdated, even clumsy. You can sense when someone adds too much glitter to their story, when guilt comes tethered to your healthy question, when emotional expression tilts performative. This doesn't make you hard or cold. It makes you quietly sovereign. Control of perception is control of power. That's precisely why liars crave your trust so fiercely, not because they want affection, but because attention is the doorway through which reality enters your mind. If they can manage your attention by drama or guilt or sweet sincerity, they own the framing. Take back your framing, and they lose their kingdom entirely. Stoic philosophy ultimately trains this self-management. The liar manipulates external appearances. The Stoic governs internal assent. Epictetus wrote, "What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about things." The liar's craft thrives on altering your judgments. The antidote, therefore, is self-mastery, the ability to hold your own perceptions, verify them, and choose conclusions deliberately instead of reflexively. Doubt becomes a tool instead of a toxin. The paradox of all this is almost poetic. The liar who seeks control ends up exposing their own imprisonment to appearances. The honest observer, who resists manipulation through self-knowledge, becomes internally free. Liars can only exist where people outsource perception. The moment you claim responsibility for your own discernment, they lose jurisdiction. You become unconnable, not by suspicion, but by serenity. Let's imagine this practically. You're at dinner, and someone begins spinning a grand tale, lavish in detail, waving of hands, heroic near misses, and impossible coincidences. Instead of swallowing or swatting it, you simply observe the tempo. Notice the ratio of relevance to fluff. Watch how their eyes check for your approval at certain beats. Curiosity
replaces gullibility. You don't challenge rudely, you just stop providing the oxygen of automatic affirmation. Inside, you ask, what purpose does this story serve them? That silent question alone begins to tilt the balance of power back to your side. The same applies emotionally. When guilt slides through the cracks of your compassion, examine the message behind it. If you loved me, you wouldn't doubt me. Translate that into Stoic language. If I loved peace, I'd never question instability. See how absurd it sounds? True affection and clear reasoning coexist. Only manipulation demands blindness as proof of loyalty. Time is the enemy of deceit. Truth endures. Lies require maintenance. Every manipulator secretly fears duration, because over time, inconsistencies calcify, emotional exhaustion sets in, and collateral witnesses accumulate. You, the aware one, don't have to rush to expose or punish. You just need to outlast the illusion. Stoic endurance, the patient strength to watch without panic, destroyed more falsehoods in history than confrontation ever did. When something feels wrong but looks polished, give it time instead of immediate belief. Stand like a mountain while winds of explanation blow around you. Liars rely on immediacy, urgency to decide, urgency to sign, urgency to agree. Time starves them. Truth invites it. After seeing so much of deception's mechanics, one might fear becoming skeptical of everyone. But the wise connection of Stoic and psychological perspectives gives a better closure. You can still trust, just differently. Not blindly, but groundedly. Think of trust as renewable energy, not finite commodity. Every new interaction begins with cautious curiosity, not automatic defense. Trust the observable consistency between words and behavior. Trust the pattern more than the performance. Trust those who answer questions, not those who punish curiosity. And perhaps most importantly, trust yourself, not as infallible, but as learning, adjusting, perceiving in good faith. That's the heart of discernment, confidence with humility. Because in the end, manipulation thrives only when we believe that our perception is unreliable. The Stoics, centuries ago, already gave us the antidote. Examine what appears, hold what endures, release the rest. That practice is psychological vaccination. And so, when someone stands before you again, eyes steady, voice even, story flowing, you'll still listen, but now with more than your ears. You'll watch the architecture of their words, not its ornaments. If a feeling of guilt tries to fog your question, you'll recognize it as crafted weather, not divine storm. If tears appear, you'll acknowledge them while keeping hold of the tangible. If they try to isolate you, you'll remember who checks your compass. Revelation doesn't make you cynical, it makes you luminous. Awareness, as Marcus Aurelius said, is light. And once the light turns on, deception scurries instinctively for shadows. You don't need to chase it. You simply need to keep the lamp of reason burning steady. That's how discernment becomes freedom. The quiet, enduring kind that doesn't flinch before sincerity, but weighs it, knows it, and then chooses to believe.